Good morning and welcome to this live session today. And I want to welcome the Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen who are here with us in the hall, as well as those who are watching us on Zoom and YouTube. My name is John Kennedy Mosoti. I'm the UNFPA Country Director for North Macedonia. And I want to welcome you to this event where the theme is bodily autonomy, the foundation of human rights. This event is being organized by the United Nations Population Fund in Republic of North Macedonia in cooperation with the Embassy of France, as well as the government of the Republic of North Macedonia, in specifically the Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, as well as the Ministry of Health. We also have representation of the Office of the President and the Office of the United Nations Resident Coordinator in the Republic of North Macedonia. I want to remind all the viewers, especially those watching online, that event is live streamed and there is interpretation in 3 languages, English, Macedonian, as well as French. Today's event, you're going to hear one word that is absolutely important: champions. And I'm very, very glad that we've put together a panelist of champions. And I will say something about all of them when we're doing the introductions. But where did all this begin? The International Conference on Population and Development, held in Cairo in 1994, marked the acceptance of a new paradigm in addressing human reproduction and health. For the first time, there was a clear focus on the needs of individuals and on the empowerment of women, and the emergence of an evolving discourse about the connection between human rights and health, linking new conceptions of health to the struggle for social justice, as well as respect for human dignity. These achievements were further advanced the following year in the Beijing Platform for Action, and this progress that has been made since then, especially in the inclusion on issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health in the Agenda 2030, and particularly Goal 5 on advancement, gender equality and advancement of women in 2015. 5 years later, that is in 2019, we held the Nairobi Summit on the ICPD 25, and the issues pertaining to bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health took center stage, and clear commitments were made by many, many governments, organizations that were in attendance. And North Macedonia was well represented there, and I'll say something about it, as well as the other sponsors that we have here. I'm proud, I'll be mentioning every single panelist that we have, but I'm also proud to mention that we have the First Lady who participated in Nairobi here with us. We have the Minister for Labor as well. We have the UN Resident Coordinator. And we can go on and on, including Hera, the representative of Hera, who's here with us as well. But what we are doing is that as we prepare for the road to Paris, and because this is an event that goes on to reaffirm and cements our commitment to the bodily autonomy as well as SRHR, it shows that the Republic of North Macedonia is not only a champion, but is willing to go the extra mile to be able to advance issues of bodily autonomy as well as sexual and reproductive health. So this brings us to the present, the Generational Equality Forum, which is a global gathering of gender equality convened by the United Nations Women and co-chaired by France as well as Mexico in partnership with the civil society and youth. The forum kicked off in Mexico City in March of 2021 and will culminate in Paris, France in June from the 28th to the 2nd of July. The United Nations Population Fund co-leads one of the action coalitions of the Generational Equality Forum, which is the one on bodily autonomy as well as sexual and reproductive health. A new partnership of governments, including the government of the Republic of North Macedonia, civil society, and that is why we have Hera here as well, the United Nations and the private sector to promote the rights of women and adolescent girls. Paris Generation Equality Forum and beyond is an important opportunity for maintaining accountability and achievement, especially in North Macedonia national commitments made during the Nairobi summit in 2019. In April this year, the United Nations Population Fund launched its State of the World Population 2021, a seminal report for which, for the first time, the report focused entirely on bodily autonomy, and it builds on the two United Nations indicators, the SDG 561 and 562, tracking progress towards a target in Sustainable Development Goals to achieve sexual and reproductive health and rights by all by 2030. So, dear distinguished panelists, dear viewers, especially those in the social media, and we are glad to have you. We welcome you to this event, Bodily Autonomy, the Foundation of Human Rights. We have 7 speakers today who are participating in this panel, and I believe they'll be able to share with us some of their views. And as I said, the word that we're going to use very often here is champions. And it's not champions just in name, it's champions because they advance the rights of women and girls, especially adolescent girls, when it comes to issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Bodily autonomy is the foundation upon which the SDGs are built on. So we are privileged, first and foremost, to have Ms. Yagoda, Her Excellency Ms. Yagoda Shapaska, who's the Minister of Labor and Social Affairs of the Republic of North Macedonia, who's been championing issues of gender for a very long time, but also who participated in the Nairobi summit, a clear champion that we have here. We also have His Excellency Venko Filipche, who's the Minister of Health of the Republic of North Macedonia. And as we said, issues of health are fundamental in our realizing bodily autonomy. So again, we want to welcome the Minister of Health for his participation. Then we have Julie Machaval, who's the Cooperation Attaché, Embassy of the French Republic in North Macedonia. And again, France is going to be the host of the Generation Equality Forum in June 2021, and France is a champion on bodily autonomy. So thank you very much for coming. Then we have Alana Armitage, who is the UNFPA Regional Director for Eastern Europe and Central Asia, who's joining us on Zoom virtually. And thank you so much for coming. She is a UNFPA leader, and by the way, you may not be able to know, she was named one of the 100 champions on gender very recently, maybe last month. So welcome, and we are grateful to have you here. We have Mrs. Elizabeta Bozinowska, who is the program director of HERA, a champion again on issues of sexual and reproductive health. HERA has done a tremendous job in this country in championing the rights of women and girls, and especially on issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health. And she's also a participant in the Nairobi Summit, a champion on these issues. Then we have Her Excellency Elizabeta Godzieska, who is the spouse of the Republic of North Macedonia. She's a medical professional, she's a professor, and she wears so many hats, but one of the most, one of those attributes really is a champion for gender equality as well as the rights of adolescent girls, and really one of the most visible champions of the things that we're going to speak to today. Last and certainly not the least is Rosanna Dujak, who is the United Nations resident coordinator in the Republic of North Macedonia, who is going to give us a perspective of what the United Nations could do better or would be doing in this country. So I want to welcome all the panelists. Thank you very much for being here. So for the next steps, what we're going to do is we'll be able to pose questions to the panelists, and they would respond. We have a couple of questions for each of the panelists, and they would have 2 to 4 minutes to answer. Please be precise. And I request that you be very deliberate and relatively slow because of the interpretation. And I'm specifically looking at them, and they are giving me a thumbs up for saying that. And let's put the show on the road. Thank you very much. So today's panel discussion will start with the Minister of Labour and Social Policy of the Government of the Republic of North Macedonia, Ms. Shapaska. As we reflect on the journey from Nairobi and the commitments made by the government, North Macedonia has been a shining light, has shown active involvement in the preparation for the vision of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy, as well as Sexual Reproductive Health. My question is, what do you think are the major breakthroughs that also affect the aspects of bodily autonomy, especially here in North Macedonia?
Thank you very much, respected director, Mr. Mosoti, respected colleague, Mr. Venko Filipce, dear počituvana, dear Mr. Juri Miravel, representative of the embassy, and dear Ms. Alana Armitraj, dear First Lady of Republic of North Macedonia, Elizabeta Georgievska, respected Rosana Dujak, and respected Betty Božinoska. It is really a pleasure to be part of this event, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss such important issues. It is really a privilege to be part from the action group for sexual and reproductive health and rights, which is one of the important subjects of our country. The Ministry of Labour and Social Policy, together with all the shareholders in the society, and in particular the Ministry of Health, are leaders in finding policies and creating policy in the segment of the respect of sexual and reproductive rights. Our country is not a leader only in the region, but in a broader area, and we received a recognition from the Nairobi event, and we have made significant steps that are really important, and I would like to point out few of them. When we were elected last September, the first law that we adopted was the law on prevention of discrimination. It was a law that was defining the sexual orientation and gender identity as one of the bases for discrimination, and this law is in accordance with the EU regulations and creates the possibility to create a professional body, Anti-Discrimination Commission, which will work within this field. And this commission is already working on the issues of the citizens that have felt being discriminated against any basis. And the second law that the government adopted, which was adopted January this year, it was the law on prevention against violence, including domestic violence as well. This is an obligation which, with the ratification of the Convention of Istanbul, as a country we have taken upon, and this is how we start with real implementation in the everyday life of our citizens. And I'm particularly proud as a Minister of Labour and Social Policy that the law on violence and prevention against violence has been voted by all members of parliament in the Assembly. The message is that the questions for the violence against women are recognized as a top priority by the governing majority and the opposition as well. Human rights are fields that unite all the citizens in a country, and this is why we have a period when we have to start with the true implementation of this solution. The protection of the woman is one coordinated institutional approach to all the shareholders in the society in order to be able to cope in the right way, and it provides support mechanisms of the victim for social, psychological support, inclusion on the labor market, and leaving the home where the person lives with the person that does the violence. The traditional role of the woman in our society, stereotypes lead to have domestic violences in the last period, but now we had the legal basis. We have created a high quality legal solution, and we work together with our international partners in establishing different rule books and for the implementation of this decision. And I believe that these problems and the violence will be put in a framework that means real progress within the field of human rights. I also would like to mention one more law that wasn't mentioned previously. I had the opportunity to work in the parliament and together with the previous Minister of Health. This is the law on abortion. It is a modern legal solution which clearly defines the freedoms of women, the right of the women to decide about their own body, their bodily autonomy, the number of children, when they will have the children, their partners, as well as the right to stop, to end the pregnancy. This law decision is put us as one of the countries that gives this freedom of the women for the bodily autonomy.
In the last year and so, we as a country, as all other countries in the world, were faced with the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, which is not only an economic but also a health crisis. We are not, however, going to give up our commitments. On the contrary, we're even more motivated to move forward with the goal of addressing the real needs of the citizens when it comes to sexual and reproductive health. Thank you very much.
For that very eloquent and very good response on some of the issues that you've touched on, especially the legislative and policy framework, where you've spoken about issues of violence, you've spoken about issues of human rights, bodily autonomy, which is really fantastic, because that is what we're looking at. But my second question really relates to the rollout of itself. How is the implementation itself at the country level? So we're talking about, for example, comprehensive sexuality education, issues of family planning, access to services. How is it being rolled out in the country, and how is it affecting those who are supposed to benefit the most?
I agree with you that legislation is one thing. However, the process of implementation is the real challenge, because it will bring the benefits for the citizens. We, as Ministry of Labour and Social Policy, are currently finalizing the gender equality strategy for the period 2021-2027, and in that strategy we have listed all the issues that need to be addressed and implemented in the forthcoming period. We are also working on finalizing the draft of the Equal Opportunities Law. It is a very important law. We were invited to attend the Venice Commission session where we'll be discussing the provisions from the law regarding the 3 new gender mechanisms foreseen in this law. However, after that, the process of implementation will follow. Based on the gender equality strategy, action plans are going to be developed. They will be valid for 1 year, and with the implementation of the action plans, we'll be able to make good on the commitments. We are aware that in our society there are still stereotypes. I was talking a little while ago about the traditional role of the woman in the family. However, with joint action, not only from the institutions, but also with the NGO sector, and I would like to commend them for their participation. NGOs are our partner, not only for raising the general awareness, but also with regard to establishing the general as well as the special services that will implement the provisions of the law. We as a country are working on raising the public awareness about gender equality in all areas, starting from the youngest of ages. For the first time this year, we are adopting a 3-year action plan on comprehensive sexual education in the schools. It will be for children aged 13 to 15. At the same time, a handbook for training of teaching staff has been developed, and these teachers will be working on this program, on this pilot program. We want to raise awareness from the earliest of ages. We want to train our children who will be aware of the equality between the two sexes in the society, between men and women equally, not only in families, not only with regard to the division of responsibilities within a family. They should also be aware about the access to rights in political life, economic life, also in the role of policymakers as well as decision makers. As a country, I'm really proud that in the past period we've made good steps forward to make progress in these democratic areas because as you know, we are aspiring towards EU membership, and we are doing that first by transposing the EU acquis in our legislation and also by means of implementation of those laws. Thank you.
Very clearly, you can see that there is tremendous progress that is being made by the ministry, by the government in this respect, and really grateful to hear those wonderful words and actions that have been taken. And probably, even as we talk about sexual and reproductive health, I want to move on to the Ministry of Health. And sexual and reproductive health, the health is actually contained in the phrase itself, health. Sexual and reproductive health. And the ministry, which is represented here by the minister, and I'm very grateful to have you, Minister Filipce. You know, the ministry has been expanding its already successful prevention programs for women's reproductive health. They are being aligned with the international and European practices, and you made bold commitments in Nairobi. But despite the progress, I mean, we know that we're still working on achieving the goal of health. And in its purest form, which is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being in all matters relating to also reproductive system. I would like to ask, Honorable Minister, what are the main challenges when it comes to accessing health services, especially for sexual and reproductive health in North Macedonia?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to such a distinguished meeting and important meeting where we can share experiences with all stakeholders that have made a contribution towards strengthening a very important segment of our healthcare system. Distinguished Director of UNFPA for our country, distinguished panelists, representatives of the government, of the cabinet of the president, UN agencies, civil society, representatives of UNFPA in our country. I think this is an excellent moment and really a great benefit when between two important events like two fora, one in Nairobi and now the other one in Paris, there is something that we can boast of, we as a country. There is what we can say, we did this based on action plans, on strategies. We can say and explain to you how each of the stakeholders made a contribution and how one can see the merits of all stakeholders in the reforms. And that's we know that health sector is a very complex system, and also the sexual and reproductive health is a complex issue. It's not just one project, it's not just one level of healthcare. It's not a sphere where just one institution can solve the problems or make the results visible. And thanks to this approach, which was an inclusive one, participatory, which included state institutions, civil society, UN agencies, primarily UNFPA. In the Macedonian parliament, then HERA was involved as an NGO with their expertise, conveying information to all the women that were faced with challenges. That was a law that the previous law was quite restrictive. It included articles that interfered with the will of women. And after that, we created a modern European law where the will of the woman comes first. She is the one who decides what she's going to do with her own body, and the medical workers are there to provide all professional care, but by no means may they influence her regarding decision making. Another very serious segment that we discussed during our first meetings with UNFPA in 2017, at that time in the office of the Prime Minister, it was strongly emphasized that we will work on one very bad issue, very big problem in Macedonia, which was the infant mortality. Thanks to our efforts with our friends from UNFPA and other organizations involving all hospitals in our country, our government really invested a lot in equipment, in knowledge building, in infrastructure. And only 3 years after that meeting in 2017, last year there were already visible results in this field, and we made some analysis. I think it was rarely that a country in the world has achieved halving the infant mortality, so reducing it to 1/2 from what it used to be, especially with regard to early neonatal death. That was a process that entailed a lot of investments, a lot of hard work, but wise investments. Regarding preventive HIV programs, I must mention one segment where we cooperate a lot with the civil society, where we use their expertise, knowledge, and access to information which they generously share with us. And one model of social contracting, which we started in 2018, it really yielded results. These were excellent results comparable to EU countries, and the process has been inclusive. Everyone from their own aspect, using their expertise, government organizations, NGOs, they made a contribution to that, and we also introduced new models. For example, lately we have started new therapies at the infectious disease clinic. Without further ado, I would summarize by giving you another piece of information. So, sexual and reproductive health for us is extremely important, and this is proven by the fact that the first moment that IPA funds became open for us for the health sector, the 3 projects that we applied for funds with, in terms of drafting the TORs, and so from 3 projects, 2 are most directly involved with sexual and reproductive health, and the third one is about early detection of cancers, improving maternal health, as well as something related to IT and digital health. I believe that this hard work of ours will continue to yield results, because we are all aware that one has to invest in healthy future, because the young people are the pillar of our country, of our state. Thank you.
That elaborate response, Minister Philip, and it's really gratifying, especially the statistics that you gave about having, the number of infant mortality. That's an achievement that really is unparalleled, and you have to be congratulated. The people of North Macedonia have got to be congratulated for that wonderful progress. Now, the two ministries are the focal points for the generation equality here in North Macedonia from the government side. We want to go global. We've seen the progress that is being made in North Macedonia, but now we want to know why Paris? Why do we have to go to France on the 28th of this month for us to be able to engage on issues of generational equality? And we have here Julie Mahaval, who's the cooperation attaché at the Embassy of France in Republic of North Macedonia. And of course, also a champion of sexual and reproductive health and rights, because France is also a co-chair of the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy. My question to you, Julie, is, would you, for those who do not understand exactly what the forum is, what really is the political structure of the generation equality in Paris? And what is it that you want to achieve, with who and how?
Merci, bonjour à toutes et tous, Madame la Ministre, Monsieur le Ministre, Madame la Première Dame.
Thank you very much. Mr. Minister, dear partners, first of all, I would like to apologize the ambassador's absence from this meeting, because the ambassador had to travel to Paris urgently. Tonight, the ambassador will have a will be attending the joint dinner between the Prime Minister Macron and Prime Minister Zaev. Once again, apologies. For me, it's been a great honor to attend this forum and to present the forum on generational equality and to speak about bodily autonomy. But also to speak about sexual reproductive health and rights. This is indeed a very interesting event. As you know, President Macron believes that one very important topic of the French presidency will be the topic of women's rights. And in line with this idea, he wanted that a forum on generation equality be organized in order to promote women's rights and equality between men and women. So 25 years after the Beijing conference, the goal is to fulfill goal number 5, which is one about sustainable development as well as equality between women and men. In addition, several partners from public and private spheres will join hands. UN Women as an organization was also invited. And there was one gathering in March. So this is all about Action Coalition or Action Coalitions that will be working on 6 main topics about the role of women in the world. In 1 year, we've already managed to have 100 partners that joined hands with us to achieve these goals. One needs to strengthen the rhetorics about equality between men and women, and we know that this Action Coalition wants to fight poverty, to achieve better social justice, to help the participation of women, support organizations which deal with women's rights and bodily autonomy. So for us and for President Macron, this is a very important topic. Women's rights must be fully acknowledged and granted. Mr. Macron would like France to be the champion among champions in this action coalition. The goal is to aim high, to raise the bar as high as possible, so that all women could decide independently and autonomously about their own future. In this regard, we've worked together with our Macedonian counterparts, and based on the foundations laid at the Nairobi summit, the coalition will take the necessary actions that have not been achieved before, in order to be able to mobilize more funding and to obtain as much support as possible regarding sexual reproductive health rights. One can notice that in some countries trends are backward rather than forward. Our coalition would like to make these services in the area of SRH universal, and especially with regard to access to contraception. This is all based on human rights, on the human rights approach, the right for one to decide on their own about their own body, to be informed, to want to have children or not want to have children. And there is also the a possibility for medical abortion or any kind of abortion. It's also about societal norms, about models of behavior regarding sexuality education. So this education, which is should be comprehensive about sexuality, is youth-oriented, is children-oriented, so that the future generations could act in the future. Youth and children should be the ones who will build back better, especially after the negative consequences of the pandemic of COVID-19. The Action Coalition wants to build upon the results that have been achieved, and that there is no regression in this regard. The Action Coalition is an opportunity for youth to give them tools to build a more equitable, a fairer society, and I hope that in June we'll be able to achieve this during the Generation Equality Forum. States have a key role to make sure that bodily autonomy is implemented in practice. We provide our support to civil society organizations, including women's organizations, and all other initiatives working for women's rights. There is a support fund of about 120 million euros. Sexual and reproductive health rights are a priority. Elisabetta is a representative who can speak about this. We are now in the basically in the run-up to this forum. We are true champions. All organizations who would like to make a contribution can do that in the following weeks. They could do it individually or collectively. France and North Macedonia are involved in this, so I extend to you a kind invitation to attend the Paris meeting. Thank you very much.
Ти благодарам, Жули, многу за овој опширен одговор. И значи видов дека зборувате за дел од приоритетите кои што ги спомнете. И пред да ја повикам Алана Армитаж, имам само едно прашање кое што би сакал да го прашам. Затоа што имаме финансирање, значи имаме малку бројки, зборувавме за соработка, за човекови права. Вие сте во Северна Македонија. Што мислите, кои се најголемите прашања, значи критичните прашања на кои што вие ќе можете да работите со сите партнери во владата, граѓанското општество, Обединетите нации, во иднината? Значи кои прашања ќе можеме да ги решиме за да го одговориме прашањето за телесната автономија? Thank you very much for the question. This subject is of critical importance in terms of bodily autonomy, and there are no new challenges. It is the same challenges that we are facing in the past, how we can cope with them. I think that the education process is vital, and if you ask me, this is really where we need to work on in France. And this kind of education is mandatory from primary school to gymnasium. The students have 3 sessions during the year, and all those sessions are being fully implemented. I am convinced that they are also really useful. And by working with this, we are tackling one project with UN Women, which was started with the implementation during Ambassador Timonier's time here. We have worked with men and young boys regarding the question of gender equality, and we were really amazed why in the schools there are no formally organized education within these areas so that the students can receive the right data, the right information. And therefore, I do believe that the key lies in the education, and an education which will be adapted and which will start at the earliest age, and it will enable the people to discuss the equality, gender equality, the consent, the responsibility, the accountability, and it should be done in the schools, but also in an informal way as well, so that the students shouldn't learn by themselves in front of their screens or from the social media. So education from the earliest age, but I'm pointing out that we should talk not only with girls but also with boys. We should talk about diseases, contraception methods, and this is not a new challenge. This is the same challenge that we have been facing for quite a period now. The subject of the education for us is one of the priority subjects that we will tackle within the frameworks of our action coalition for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and I hope that we will achieve some certain efforts and results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That response. And, you know, Alana, you were in Nairobi. You have also been a champion on these issues for a very long time. I did mention some of the achievements. But as the regional director for UNFPA, especially in this region, I'm really looking at us trying to catalyze this process of making sure that bodily autonomy is important. But what really does it mean to realize bodily autonomy? What does it mean for UNFPA, especially when it comes to the promotion of gender equality and the respect of people's rights and choices? Sorry, Alana, we can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good. So thank you, John. And Dobarden, good morning, bonjour to our distinguished panelists and guests in Skopje, as well as all of those who are joining us online today. I'm extremely excited to be part of this group of champions, and I would like to recognize first and foremost Her Excellency Professor Elizabeta Georgievska, First Lady of North Macedonia, the distinguished Minister of Labor and Social Policy, Ms. Jagoda Shapaska, Honorable Minister of Health, Mr. Venko Filice, the Cooperation Attaché at the French Embassy, Ms. Julie Maraval, and Ms. Elizabeta Bojinowska, HERA representative. My dear colleague and outstanding UN resident coordinator, Rosana Dujak, it's wonderful to see you. And I want to also admire my dear colleagues from UN Women, the co-conveners of the Gender Equality Forum, who together with France and Mexico, I would like to express our deep gratitude for the great collaboration and partnership working together to achieve rights and choices for all women and girls. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me start by saying that bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights are at the heart of all that UNFPA does, essential for full gender equality and a precondition for virtually all of the Sustainable Development Goals. Bodily autonomy, the ability to be in control of our bodies and make decisions about our lives, is absolutely fundamental. It's the foundation for achieving more equal, more integrated, and ultimately more vibrant and thriving societies. But all around the world, women and girls are not in control over their bodies and their lives. Somewhere today, at this very moment, a woman is being killed because she supposedly sullied the honor of her family. A girl is being told to get dressed because today will be her wedding day. She's scarcely 15 years old. A young woman is being denied contraception without her husband's consent. And a woman is being forced to have sex against her will. Women have the right to make their own decisions about their bodies. Yet how many women can actually claim they have the power to exercise that right? The 2021 UNFPA State of the World Population Report that was launched a few weeks ago shows that globally, in countries where we have data, nearly half of the women lack the power to make their own decisions, whether to have sexual relations with their partner, whether to use contraception. And this lack of autonomy can undermine their ability to exercise power and agency in other areas of their lives. In this region, the share of women who aren't allowed to make decisions in at least one of these areas is generally lower. But it's still considerable, with 19% in Ukraine, 31% in Albania, and 34% in Armenia. The right to the autonomy of our bodies means that we must have the power and agency to make choices without fear of violence or having someone else decide for us. Intertwined with it is the right to bodily integrity, where women live free, where people live free from physical acts to which they do not consent. For many people, but especially women and girls, life is fraught with violations to their bodily autonomy and integrity. We see this when a lack of contraceptive choices leads to an unplanned pregnancy. We see this in life-derailing practices like child marriage. Autonomy is violated when people with diverse sexual orientations and gender identities cannot walk down a street without fearing assault or humiliation, or when people with disabilities are stripped of their rights to self-determination, to be free from violence, or to enjoy a safe and satisfying sexual life. The list goes on and on. And what was bad has in fact become worse, because now with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has further diminished women's autonomy by increasing gender-based violence, new barriers to healthcare, unplanned pregnancies, and job and education losses. So, distinguished participants, in conclusion, although there are many impediments to bodily autonomy, gender inequality is perhaps the most insidious and pervasive one. So real sustained progress depends on uprooting gender inequality and all forms of discrimination and transforming the social and economic structures that maintain them. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Alana. And again, you've reiterated this point about bodily autonomy, the autonomy of self, as being foundational, as being the basis upon which we could be able to realize everything else that we want to come to the person herself. But my question really to you, Alana, is what really needs to happen, therefore? What do we need to do to ensure that girls everywhere that can make those fundamental decisions for themselves? Because as you've stated, these decisions are being made by other people. What do we have to do? And as UNFPA, what perhaps should we do?
Well, let me say it even more clearly then, John. I think, first of all, we do not have to, and we must not accept the status quo. That's the first thing.
Yes.
Many of the practices that I've mentioned are rooted in deep-seated social norms and even traditions that place lower value in women than in men, that presume that women are owned by others. So dismantling gender inequalities in social norms and in practice really is the key. Gender equality is a bold goal that has been internationally agreed as the 5th Sustainable Development Goal and as the purpose of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and the 25th anniversary of which we are observing this year. And I think all countries can do more to achieve gender equality, since no country is there yet. Governments have a lead role to play in reaching that goal by fulfilling their obligations under human rights treaties, such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the CEDAW, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Governments can alter the social, political, institutional, and economic structures that reinforce and thrive on gender unequal norms. And this is why we in UNFPA are so pleased with North Macedonia's leadership role in the Action Coalition on Bodily Autonomy of the Gender Equality Forum. And I'd like to use this opportunity to congratulate the government of North Macedonia on its outstanding leadership on gender equality, and also on putting into action the commitments made at the Nairobi Summit on maternal and newborn health, introducing comprehensive sexuality education in schools, passing a law on violence against women and domestic violence, and on the human rights-based law on safe abortion, all of which have been mentioned by the distinguished panelists today. I would also like to congratulate the First Lady personally on her long-standing commitment and support, including now on addressing increased violence against women and girls during the COVID-19 pandemic. Really, her leadership has been outstanding. As the co-chairs launch the Action Coalition for Bodily Autonomy at the Generation Equality Forum in Paris later this month, together with North Macedonia, France, UN Women, and other partners, I would invite all of those listening to us today to use this platform to engage partners to come together and really address these issues. Together, the members of the Action Coalition have developed its priorities, which are quality comprehensive sexuality education, comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services that are accessible and of high quality, and addressing gender norms to increase women and girls' decision-making on sexual and reproductive health and autonomy. We also have agreed on the need to support feminist and women's organizations, networks, and movements in the promotion and protection of bodily autonomy. Now is the time to join in this collective action, continue the conversation, and think about the concrete changes that we want to see in our societies to ensure everybody's bodily autonomy. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I'd like to stress that ensuring bodily autonomy brings opportunities on a massive scale. A woman who has control over her body is more likely to be empowered in other spheres of her life. She gains not only in terms of autonomy, but also through advances in health and education, income, and safety. She's more likely to thrive, and so is her family. And when we see these benefits accrue across whole societies, we understand that communities and countries will flourish when all people are empowered to make their own informed decisions about their bodies and about their lives. Thank you so much, and back to you, John.
Thank you very much, Alana. And when we talk about the achievements that have been made at the global level, the story cannot end without the civil society. And the Generational Equality Forum is about the civil society. And when we talk about the achievements in North Macedonia, and we talk about the civil society, you have to mention HERA. And we have Elisabetta here, Bożinowska, and I'm really glad that you're here. Let's look at the partnership that we're looking at the global level and how we bring it here at the country level. And you've done tremendous work working with different partners to ensure that we achieve bodily autonomy and specifically sexual and reproductive health. What else do you think we need at the country level? How could we be able to support more to be able to ensure that we achieve those objectives and goals that we set ourselves out to achieve? They're so eloquently put together by the honorable ministers here.
Thank you. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, and online viewers, it is a pleasure to be part of this important event. First of all, I would like to congratulate UN Women for partnership related to Generation Equality Forum, as well as governments of France and Mexico for co-chair countries regarding these two important events happening this year. But also congratulate UNFPA's co-lead organization regarding Action Coalition for us very important for bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights, and of course relevant champion governments, including government of France, including government of Republic of North Macedonia, IPPF, and many other champion organizations that are really largely significantly contributing to accelerating the SRHR agenda. First of all, I would like to add some information regarding the importance of civil society organization in accelerating gender equality agenda in general, and we believe that there is no improvement of SRHR agenda, advancing of SRHR agenda. It's not possible without active involvement of civil society organization in SRHR policy and SRHR planning and implementation. There are many evidence-based argumentation for such conclusion. I will mention several. First of all, sexuality in general is sensitive issues that it's not always widely accepted by the general public. Then dealing with vulnerable and marginalized group, then in general only civil society organization can support in terms of delivering direct services, information and education related to SRHR, but also something that we all facing and witnessing in the past years, that is grow anti-gender opposition that is actually opposing very important human rights, abortion rights, LGBTI rights, introduction of comprehensive sexuality education, and actually using false information regarding the concept of gender and propagate the gender ideology concept. So we also can witness these days that in general in many countries that SRHR, but also SRHR issues, but also NGO have been pushed on the margins by some of the government and some of the anti-gender organization, even in EU countries, opposing, restricting legislation related to abortion, also a policy restriction regarding LGBTI needs and rights, and also introduction of sexual education, which do not always respond to the needs of young people, and it's not evidence-based, or it's not delivered on comprehensive way. That is why we as civil society organization, in general, civil society sector can face with various opposition, and that is why the partnership with the government is crucial if we really want to see progress and accelerate gender equality and SRHR agenda. And then when I'm talking about civil society organization, which is also various, I mean, sector, women organization, grassroots organization, SRHR organization, like in the case of North Macedonia, where we do have example that need to be followed in other country, where significant really progress and contribution have been made in SRHR policy in the past 3 years. Example that, as I mentioned, is made together in partnership with civil society organization, and example that need to be followed. Distinguished Minister already mentioned some of them. I will just mention few. I just want to emphasize for us it's very important that the old restrictive law from 2013 was revised. Actually, we now have, with adoption of the new law from 2019, we do have progressive policy that can actually guarantee safe access of the woman to safe and legal abortion. Of course, that can, in reality, woman can independently, freely decide what to do with her reproductive right and can have reproductive freedom, and of course can exercise or practice her bodily autonomy. This put our country on the map of progressive or liberal country with when it's come to reproductive legislation and policy. Example that probably need to be followed even with many other countries where unfortunately we face backlash and regression. And for us, very important, many of the guests already mentioned access to comprehensive sexuality education within the formal educational system. After 10 years or decade of recognition of comprehensive sexuality education in many strategic policy, we see now, we witness in the past 2 years that really the commitment have been in practice become reality. Now we have governmental decision, for us is very important, from 2018, which guarantee, first of all, piloting the comprehensive sexuality education within formal school by the government, Ministry of Education and Science, and Bureau of Education as a coordinator of all this process, and of course development of evidence-based curricula and action plan, how in future after the piloting we will have in reality access to comprehensive sexuality education. For us, something which is as must if we want to have empowered youth, adolescent children, if we want to have a future generation that actually are empowered, enjoying their diversity, and can be able to make their informed, responsible decision about their body, their sexuality, their reproduction. And of course, we see also comprehensive sexuality education and as something that can really eliminate gender-based violence, sexual-based violence in future, and of course can eliminate all harmful practices that really are not good, or of course is stopping the reaching gender equality.
Elisabetta, but you know, the civil society holds, you know, one of the primary objectives is to hold us accountable. Because you support policy development, but we also make sure that the commitments we made, and you're in Nairobi, the commitments we made are implemented. So we go on this march on the road to Paris, and we're coming back. Elisabetta, what will be your agenda after that? What will be your primary focus moving forward after that?
Thank you for this important question. Now, I mean, even all of us can see it's a fact. After more than 25 years after Beijing commitment, which are bold, strong, strategic action, we know about that. No single country can say that, can claim that achieved gender equality, which is devastating, and we have to admit that. When it's come to SRHR, we can also see that, yeah, whilst we do have some progress, there is a backlash and regression in some of the country. So now, more than ever, all of us together in partnership, we need to really accelerate and have ambitious, very ambitious country, very ambitious targets and commitments on globally, but also on national level. So yes, currently there is ongoing participatory process for development of the national commitments regarding SRHR. Yes, civil society organizations are part of this commitment. And for us, there are several points or areas where we are looking forward to see ambitious progress till 2026. First of all, strengthening and integrating the concept of gender equality, since especially it's in the health and advancing SRHR, especially in the sphere of all human lives, because for us, of course, it's important that gender equality is everywhere recognized. But also increasing funding mechanism for SRHR services, education, and information, particularly for vulnerable and marginalized groups. And when we are saying this, we are not talking only for health sector, which is traditionally seen, but also in other sectors we can that can also largely contribute. Sector in the public sector in Macedonia, as example, it's a Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, where we need concrete funding, allocation of funding, and concrete funding mechanism, for instance, for tackling and ensuring services for sexual and gender-based violence. Also, funding mechanism, allocation of funding within the Ministry of Education and Science for implementation of the strategy for the comprehensive sexuality education. I would also like to mention advancing legal and policy framework for SRHR services, commodities, information for women, for children, as a basic health and educational rights. And here we are talking about concrete steps. We want to see medical abortion available countrywide. We want to see in future comprehensive sexuality education, informal educational system. We want to see contraception available on the positive or essential list of drugs at national level. And of course, we also want to see this to happen as soon as possible. Also, we witness changes in primary healthcare system, I mean, globally, also in our country. So we need transformation of primary healthcare system to address and respond to the needs on those or women, girls, non-binary, transgender, other vulnerable population, to address their SRHR needs by transforming the system to address these rights, since we see that there is dropout of personnel, clinic, or lack of access to SRHR services, let's say in remote or rural areas. So this is something that we want to smartly see, make strategic action, and address this in future, since it's very, very important for us. And increased both political and financial commitment, as I already mentioned, not just changing and advancing policy, but also ensuring their effective implementation in future by this or any other government. We know that greater the efforts for gender equalities is the greater or the better SRHR outcome we will have as a country, or this is something which is applicable for all society. And for the, I think that we as civil society organization will continue to really participate and partner with the government to see all this agenda planned, but also implemented. But it's also, as civil society organization, our duty to closely monitor, to ask, demand accountability from this or any future government up to 2026, when we are discussing about the agenda, to really make serious efforts this to become reality, because it's something that we all agree it's needed and we need to do it now. So yeah, this is the answer about what agenda and what we are looking forward in future.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive agenda. Obviously, your hands are going to be full monitoring this. But we've listened now to the governments, we've listened to the civil society. Now, we want to make a quick transition to another champion. And it's always a pleasure for me to be able to engage with the First Lady of North Macedonia, even when I was coordinating the Nairobi Summit in Nairobi. Her Excellency Elisabetta Godieska is a mother, is a medical professional, is an author, is an academic, and the spouse of His Excellency the President of the Republic. As I said, I've had the pleasure of engaging with her. We've worked together on the Nairobi Summit about 1.5 years ago. And she's also been a champion and an influential person. And part of the work that she's done is like younger people, and especially adolescent girls, would look up to an independent woman like that who holds all these titles and then say, yes, you can still have a voice and be independent and do all these kind of things that you have. So I want to turn back, I want to turn my attention to you and really to be glad that you're here. So bodily autonomy is inextricably linked to bodily integrity. No question about it. It's the foundation of human rights. How do you see bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health from the human rights perspective, especially from somebody who a lot of people are looking up to? So whatever you do, whatever you say has an influence on all these precocious young people, and especially girls, seeing what you're doing.
Really a pleasure to be a part of this distinguished panel, and I will continue in Macedonian if it's not a problem.
From what previous speakers said, we could hear about the current developments in the area covered by the subject of today, both in the Republic of North Macedonia, but also globally. I have been encouraged by all the activities taking place in the area of health care and social welfare, as we could hear from the respective ministers of health and social policy, Mr. Filipce and Mrs. Shahpaska, and I was encouraged also by the news that there would be reforms in the education sector with the introduction of comprehensive sexual education. For me, as a health worker, primarily, providing health care to our citizens has always been of utmost importance. It's very important to provide access to primary health care, which is universal for all and which is of good quality. We must say that as a result of violation of reproductive and sexual health, the female population has been under attack. Therefore, they need adequate health services. We have to agree that in addition to the political and administrative levels, we have to make sure that sexual and reproductive health care services are incorporated in the basic benefits package, which means that WHO advocates for access to everybody, that everybody should have access to needed healthcare services at the time when they need and without financial burden. This is a global goal that we should all be working towards. When it comes to family planning, interruption of unwanted pregnancy, taking care of newborns, of newly delivered mothers, professional and good health care is of utmost importance as well. I will agree with John's statement that bodily autonomy is inextricably linked with bodily integrity, and it's also part of human rights. As I said in Nairobi a year and a half ago, the action plan adopted in our country in 2018 enabled Macedonia to make a big step forward in the field of sexual and reproductive health rights. I think that after the expiration of the validity of this action plan, we should continue along the same lines and make sure that bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health rights are high on the agenda based on the Generation Equality Forum. However, not everything should be about institutional activities and institutional solutions. It's very important to sensitize the ordinary citizens about this. It is really disappointing that although we as a country belong to Europe geographically and civilization-wise, it's still tragic that we in North Macedonia still have child marriages, that harmful habits are in place. That's unacceptable, that's inadmissible. Therefore, in addition to legislation, we have to work on changing the mindset, changing the mentality of the people. Unfortunately, in some backward communities, due to traditional values, there are dangers to human rights and freedoms, sometimes to the lives of people, including the lives of girls and women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And, you know, I reflect on some of the things that you've done, and recently, maybe towards the end of last year, you did visit one of the safe houses or shelters where, you know, women have unfortunately undergone violence. And I know that during COVID-19, violence has also gone up substantially, and obviously we have to be doing something. But as we're still within the pandemic, so my question really is, what do you think are the issues, especially after your visit, we continue facing as the most challenging for vulnerable groups, like especially those who have experienced violence in this country?
Yes, you were right to say that the COVID-19 pandemic has deteriorated many aspects of our lives and has shifted the focus on the institutions, especially in the healthcare sector, in terms of combating the virus and combating the consequences of the virus. However, during this negative context, I would like to commend the UNFPA as a positive example, because they intensified their operations, their work in terms of providing assistance to vulnerable groups such as elderly, people with disabilities, pregnant women, and they also worked on raising the awareness of the public about the problems caused by the increased gender-based violence during the health crisis. And they enjoyed continuously and are still enjoying the support of the Office of the President of the Republic of North Macedonia. We all hope that this pandemic will soon be over, after which we'll be able to focus on everyday problems and everyday priorities. At the end, I would like to finish by saying that we should all work diligently in the future to achieve the transformational goals of UNFPA, and these are the 3 zeros. The zero of unmet needs for family planning, 0 deaths of mothers, and 0 for gender-based violence and other harmful habits. Thank you.
Your Excellency, and for eloquently articulating the global 3 zeros that we've been fighting so hard on for the next now 9 years that we're going to fight for them until 2030. Thank you for that articulation. Last but not least, we go to the United Nations resident coordinator. She's the head of the United Nations team in North Macedonia. And as you know, United Nations Women, UN Women, is one of the main partners in the Generational Equality Forum, but also other UN agencies have been very instrumental. We cannot achieve these goals that we go for gender equality if we do not involve all partners, and we're talking about the United Nations, the civil society, and governments. But I'm really happy, Rosanna, that you're here with us, and we want to talk about bodily autonomy and SRH, and especially on the SDGs, and especially the indicators that pertains to sexual and reproductive health, whether it's 561 or 562. And we also know that the UNFPA SWOP report really was also looking at building on the SDGs indicator 561 and 562. But so for the first time ever, we're trying to make the attempt to measure women's bodily autonomy. So my question really, do you think by capturing those two indicators, have we been able to capture the measurement of it?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with such a distinguished group of panelists and champions. For some, it might be a challenge to go at the end of such a distinguished group of people, but I'm going to try and turn it into an opportunity because there's a lot of wisdom from what has already been said. I would first like to really reference the champions that we started out discussing, because I think without the global championship that we have seen from France, from UN Women, from UNFPA, we wouldn't get to a point where we can have a global discussion about this. And I really applaud the work and the thought that has gone into how are we measuring some of these things. I think I also want to reference some of the things that Alana had said. When you're talking about the SDG indicator, she actually did an excellent job of giving real examples of the 3 things that we're measuring. Because one of the things that we're measuring on bodily autonomy is women's capacity to make decisions of their health on their own, decisions on contraception on their own, and also about relations with their partners. And I think in this, the UNFPA report has really done an excellent job of looking worldwide, and has been said, only 55% of women are really fully empowered to make their choices over all 3 of these areas, and this is based on the countries where we're able to gather that information. I think I'd also like to reference to a lot of the local work, and this is what the second SDG indicator is looking at, because we're looking at legislation. And both Minister Szachpaska and Minister Filipczke were really referencing a lot of the national legislation and a lot of the work that has been going on related to maternity care, contraception, family planning, and of course, comprehensive sexual education. I would also like to really thank the civil society colleagues and the First Lady, and also France, for really talking quite a bit about sexual education and comprehensive sexual education. Because I think while we can have the laws and while we can do a lot of the measurements, unless we get the whole of society understanding what their rights are and also how their role in respecting other people's rights, we can't really move forward. We need more champions, and the champions need to understand what are their champions, what are they being champions of, both men and women, girls and boys. So I think, as you're saying, there is a lot being done at the global level, and I think North Macedonia has done an excellent job at the local level. I think for us it's really important that we continue to advocate that everyone, citizens and individuals, we're not innocent bystanders and silent witnesses when we see someone's bodily autonomy is not being fully respected. And so I think that there's a lot of excellent work going on that we can continue to build on. And this is really the core of sustainable development. We need everyone's full potential so that our society thrives. And I really think that this has been an excellent forum for us to have that in-depth discussion and look at all of those nuances. And in the end, we did discuss the SDG indicators in a very rich format. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna. You know, and I'm glad that you really referenced some of these things that we're measuring. But I'm also looking at the UN family coming together coherently, coordinated, collaborating on making sure that after Paris, we still are able to convene as a UN family, but working with the other partners to be able to advance the goals that we want to do, and specifically the ones on sexual and reproductive health. I'm just wondering from your perspective as the resident coordinator and looking at the different agencies doing their thing, trying to push the envelope as pertains to achieving those goals. What do you think we can do more? What do you think we can contribute, especially to the wonderful work, as you've said, referenced to the government, France, civil society, the First Lady, and others, ordinary people who want to do this?
I think we can continue doing a lot of the excellent joint work we're already doing. We already have some joint programs related to health, and we're also continuing to work on many areas. You know, the sexual and reproductive health is about education. It's all about women's choices. If we go further, we also need to think about women's roles as mothers, women's roles in the workplace. It's really something that affects all UN agencies, and I think there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of programs already going on that we can build on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we've almost come to the end of our session. This passionate discussions on issues of bodily autonomy as well as sexual and reproductive health. But before we go, I think it is only right that we give the two focal points, because they've been listening to everybody else, they were the first ones to speak, the right of reply. I'm sure I saw Her Excellency Yagoda writing profusely in her notepad, and I think she really wants to have it come out. So I will just 1 or 2 minutes, Minister Yagoda, and also Minister Philip, please, if you could have 1 or 2 minutes to just rebut everything else everybody else has said, and then we rebut everything and we stop here. Please, Ms. Yagoda.
Thank you very much. I tried to write something briefly as a summary of today's panel, and there is really a lot to put on this piece of paper. I can't put it all, but I would like to finish in these 2 minutes that I got. It's impossible to be a champion without the championship leadership that we're getting from our friends like the UN agency, like UNFPA, UN Women, our friends who are helping us with consultative support, expert support, financial support in order for us to be able to implement the programs, to pass the necessary legislation, and to step out of the financing from the global fund where the incidence of HIV would be under the average. Has it been always like this? No, it wasn't. As an MP, I can tell you that at the time when I was an MP, it was really a challenge to open a debate in the parliament. It was a challenge to speak about the highest infant mortality rate in Europe at that time. Together with the Ministry of Health, we managed to halve it and to get to an average value as with developed countries. For this, lots of energy has been invested, a lot of hard work, many debates, many public hearings, articulating clearly in TV, radio, in women's fora, and so on. However, even with the introduction of quotas for women for equal participation in political life, in social life, these were all steps that were necessary to take. I would like to mention one motto of disabled people in our country. Their motto says, "Nothing for us without us." I would transform it here, "Nothing for women without the women," because they should be the ones to decide about their rights, about their bodily autonomy, about their right to decide on reproduction. And I'll finish by saying that what lies ahead of us is serious work with the implementation of the laws and bylaws, and our laws and bylaws have been harmonized with the European and global standards in this area. Thank you.
And thank you for the, I think, the phrase that captures all, nothing about women without women. And I really thank you for that and for the work that, as you said, you did while in Parliament and now that you're bringing it to the Executive Office. Honorable Filipče, please, your last words.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank and congratulate all the panelists for the excellent discussions that one could learn a lot from. We have a clear roadmap for the future, and I can say that we should continue in the same way, in a participatory manner, in an inclusive manner, with our partners that we've been working together in the past, and to make the next 5 or 6 years strategy based on which we'll develop an action plan, and that all the programs under the Ministry of Health which deal with women's health to be united in one and in an inclusive way, including all the relevant ministries, NGOs, to use the commitment of our First Lady in the country, of course of the UN agency, and that in the next meeting like this, in the run-up to a new forum like the Paris Forum this time, to have lots of successes to share with the public. Thank you.
Minister Filipče, and this, we've come to the end of our event. As you've heard, it's a lot of good ideas have come up. We've discussed on how to be able to move forward. Honestly, there's a lot of work for us to do. We've done well. We seem to be making progress, but still challenges abound. We have responsibilities, and there is enough to go around. It is not the responsibility of one party. We can see the array of those who are represented here. They are shouldering that responsibility because they know everybody has a responsibility to be able to carry out this. So as we march onto the road to Paris, let us always have in mind what we need to do to make the lives of the women and girls better. Because, you know, the level of ambition that we've set for ourselves has got to be matched by actions that we have to take. We cannot keep coming, especially in forums like this, or even in bigger forums like the ones we're going to have in Paris, as the same we had in Nairobi, or the one we had in Cairo, or in Beijing, and be talking about the same things. It is so many years, it's 25 years, 26 years, 7 years after we started talking about this. Enough is enough. Now let us take up that mantle and do something about it. Whether the UN, we have to be held responsible, counterparts in government as well as donors and partners, and influential people, we also have a responsibility to be able to step on. But I want to applaud the work that North Macedonia, the government of North Macedonia has done. You've really done well. And even the fact that you're co-chairing this action coalition on bodily autonomy speaks to the fact that you are champions and you recognize those rights, and they are important for women and girls everywhere. So, as we make commitments again in Paris, and I know that you're going to reiterate some of the commitments that were made in Nairobi, we come back to this country and we take them and we put them on the table and we say, what do we need to do? And we start doing it. And I'm looking forward to that, because that girl, the rural poor girl who's looking up and saying, what did they say about me, needs to see the change in her life, and that is what we need to do. Thank you very much. I want to thank each and every one of you for participating. It has been a stimulating discussion, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the interpreters, all the technical crew, all those who put this event together. I'm really grateful to my office here in North Macedonia, led by Aphrodita and colleagues. Thank you, Irena, and thank you all the others who've made sure that this distinguished panel is actually here. Thank you, Franz, for leading the way, and we're going to work together on this issue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye-bye.